Welcome to Storytime Fun, boys and girls. We hope you enjoy. Today's story is out of the classic fairy tales book from Hans Christian Andersen and the Brothers Grimm, as retold by Nicola Baxter. And today's story is called The Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time, there was a prince who had very firm views about princesses. "Many of them are simply not princesses," he said airily. "My dear, whatever do you mean?" asked his mother, the queen. "Of course they are real princesses. What about that perfectly charming girl we met last week?" "She spoke unkindly to her maid," said the prince. Yes, my boy, but Princess Pearl from Argentina was sweetness itself, surely," urged the king. "She was silly," said the prince. "But Princess Petronella? So delightful, so accomplished, so refreshing," cried the king and the queen together. "She was not a real princess at all," said the prince. "She talked all the time and never listened to a word anyone else said. Real princesses are, they're, that is, they seem, I don't know." "I do wish he could meet someone and settle down," sighed the king as the prince rushed from the room. "But how are we to ever be sure that a girl is a real princess? Nowadays it's so difficult to be sure. I believe I married the last real princess myself." "My dear," said the queen with a smile, "if the right girl comes along, I know exactly how to make sure that she is what she seems. Just leave it to me." That year, the prince rode far and wide. He visited many countries and met many princesses, but he found fault with every one of them. At last, as winter approached, he returned home, more lonely than ever before. But one night, as the king and the queen and the prince sat in front of a roaring fire, there came a deafening knocking at the door of the castle. "Some poor fellow is out there in the storm," said the king. "We must let him in to warm himself." "But my dear," his wife protested, "we don't know who it is." But the king was already striding toward the door. The wind blew so hard that he could hardly stand upright as he pulled it open. Outside in the courtyard stood a rain-drenched figure. The king had to peer more closely to see that it was not a man at all, but a young girl, shivering in a thin cloak. "My dear child," cried the king, "come in at once. Whatever can you be doing out on a night like this?" "My carriage overturned, and I was forced to go in search of shelter," replied the girl, and as she came inside, "and you would be surprised how few people are prepared to help a real princess when she knocks on their door." The king and queen exchanged a glance. Did you say a real princess?" asked the king. Of course, his visitor replied. My father is a king, after all. Well, that is interesting, said the king. I wonder, have you met my son, the prince? The prince hurried forward at once to kiss the princess's dainty hand. In fact, he had been unable to take his eyes off the visitor since she first began to drip onto the royal carpet. I will have a room prepared for you at once, said the queen, hurrying from the room. An hour later, the princess was tucked up in her room, and the prince wandered off to walk up and down the corridors, lost in a warm glow of imagining. The king could not wait to consult his wife. Well, he whispered, what do you think? The boy seems rather taken with her, but is she the real thing? We'll soon know about that, said the queen. I have put 20 mattresses on her bed. Below the bottom mattress, I have placed a dried pea. Now we shall see what we shall see. Ah, said the king, the old pea trick, eh? Though in truth, he had not the faintest idea of what the queen was talking about. Next morning, the members of the royal family were, well, for different reasons, not at all able to concentrate on their breakfast. Things did not improve when their visitor entered the room. As the prince hurried to find the pretty girl a chair, the queen leaned forward eagerly. My dear, she said, I do hope you had a quiet and restful night. I'm afraid not, replied the girl, although you made me so welcome and comfortable. Yet I tossed and turned all night long, and this morning I am black and blue. It's as though there was a boulder under my mattresses. And at that, the queen beamed at her son. Here, she said, is a real princess, my boy. Only a girl with truly royal blood would have skin so tender that she could feel a tiny pea through 20 mattresses. You have my blessing. And mine, cried the king, jumping up to clap his son on the shoulder. Luckily, it was soon discovered that the princess had fallen as much in love with the prince as he had with her. They were married soon after, amid great rejoicing. Well, that was many years ago now, but the Royal Museum still contains a rather wrinkled green exhibit. You can see it for yourself if you care to visit. Well, that's it for today. We'll see you next time.